Hello and welcome to another episode of the Way We Grow podcast, a production of the Craft Growers Network. I'm your host, Nick Wolfe, and today my guest is Andy of PNW Cultivar. Andy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You were recommended by my buddy that follows you on Instagram. He goes by Lobster Craft, but he was like, "Oh, you should check this guy out. He started doing tissue culture lately, and he makes seeds and does pheno hunts and grows a bunch of beautiful looking flower." And I wasn't even following you, and I'm in the Pacific Northwest myself, so I looked you up and I was like, "Oh, definitely need to get this guy on the show." So, welcome. What's new in your grow world?
Oh man, nothing crazy new. I'm actually going back in time. Much like a lot of breeders right now, going back to find those lost or hidden terps that we missed or bred out. I'm in the middle of a project now that I'm working with a Korean Landrace.
Oh, wow.
I myself a Korean, so I want to try and bring back some of that. I know that we probably haven't seen any of the Korean genetics in any of the genetics since lavender. I think that's the last one. But
What what genetics were those that contributed to the lavender that came out of Korea? I'm actually not I'm not aware of that.
nothing that truly came out of Korea. It came from, I think it was Big Korean Skunk, um,
Okay.
BKS, and that was bred into it. Um, and I think that was the last one that I remember being bred into it. I tried my best to look for BKS and couldn't find it, but I did come up with Korean land races from the land race team
Okay.
that I plan to try and remake Korean skunk. Um, and I'm going to be getting those 90s super skunk seeds from Marcus Aurelius. You know him?
Okay. Yeah. I actually we did an episode with him.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that
Yeah,
guy is really nice. I
he
like him.
is.
And yeah, and he's going to be hooking me up with some of those super skunk seeds that I can hunt through those and, maybe bring that Korean skunk back that way with between the two. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's my latest project. Yeah.
Very cool. And well, we see anybody following you on Instagram can see that you've started your tissue culture journey, which I'm also doing currently as well. So
Yep.
that's really cool, and I want to get into that, but I think we'll get into that more towards the end of the show since it's so current. But I like to find out where people sort of started their journey with plants. A lot of people either just started with cannabis or they grew vegetables with their mom and dad or aunt and uncle or grandma or grandpa or some family friend that introduced them to plants in general. So where did it all start for you?
Mine was an accident. I
Okay.
was, yeah, I was in junior high. Um, I think me and my buddy were like eighth grade best friends, and we were smoking at his house, and well, we always smoke at his house, and
Okay.
we chucked the seeds out. Well, we only get brick weed in Chicago back then,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So you either get crappy brickweed, which had a lot of seeds, or like better brickweed that had less seeds, right? But yeah, we used to chuck those seeds out the window, and come spring, a lot of plants started like coming out of the ground. We're like, oh crap, we better get them before the grandpa sees it.
That's
And
so funny.
yeah, we killed most of them. I decided to keep one of them, and I tried to grow it at home using a solar bulb in my closet,
Okay.
and I really couldn't get it to flower because I didn't understand the concept of 12-12 or the
Sure.
different seasons. I just kept the light on the entire time, and I think for like maybe a whole year I couldn't get it to flower. Eventually it did flower because out of frustration, but
Sure.
it never fully went into flower.
But you
I
kept
was
it for a
confused.
year.
Yeah, and I was just so confused, right? Because I was just a stoner eighth grade kid that didn't really
Sure.
understand much, and you can't find kind of that information back then. There wasn't very much out there.
What year was this?
99.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Um, oh, that's so funny. I do understand that like the light cycle, the
Yeah,
fact that they have a photo period is one of those things that, especially when you're younger, I don't think is something that clicks early on because the sun comes up and it goes down, but I don't think I was aware of the fact that it went up and went down in different intervals until like I was a little bit older than eighth grade.
right.
But that's really funny. So I'm curious though, as an eighth grader, how were you able to keep a plant alive for a year? Some people struggle keeping it alive for 3 months, for a full cycle.
Yeah, I had no problem keeping it alive for a whole year. I just, whenever it seemed like, I already understood the idea of root pruning back then, so I would just
Okay.
prune the roots and then put in a new thing of soil every time. And I had no problem with the plant. It would look
Wow.
kind of droopy every time I do that, but honest to God, like it would just recover and be fine the next week.
Where did you learn the concept of root pruning at that young age?
So my aunt is a florist.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so she was a florist for a very long time, and I would go over to her place, and kind of embarrassing, but every time I would go to a dance or something, I would make my own flowers and stuff, and I would learn from her little
Dude,
bits
that's
here and there.
that's actually
Yeah.
pretty boss to be like, no, I made this boutonniere, man. It's all G.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a flex back then, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I bet you that at least like some girls were like, he made his own boutonniere. That's kind of cool. Hey, can you make me a corsage?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, I ended up doing that for my friends sometimes too.
Nice.
Um,
Nice. And whereabouts in Chicago are you from?
South Side.
South
Yeah,
side.
yeah, South Side Chicago. Originally grew up in Posen, Illinois,
Okay.
um, and then moved to the southern side of Chicago, and then out into the burbs.
Cool. Yeah, my dad's from Palatine, and so I have a bunch of family out in Chicago. I do always love visiting Chicago. It's all I want is an Italian beef and a
Yes,
Chicago dog.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
like nothing
go.
but nothing like a Chicago dog or beef from Chicago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like I eat way too much Portillo's when I'm there.
Now, when you get your beef, do you get it dipped
Oh yeah,
or do you not? Yeah, there you go.
dipped with extra peppers.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the shit. It's I we would always we ordered the boxes every once in a while from Portillo's to make it at home because you just can't find that stuff out on the West Coast.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Well, so then
There's nice places out here though. It's a place called West of Chicago Company.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and out here by Seattle, and
okay,
that is pretty legit.
I
So
gotta
if you're
check
out in
that out
Seattle, you gotta try it. Yeah, it's good. It's legit.
for sure. Well, so let's see. So your first plant, you just you frustrated the hell out of it, grew it for over a year, and then it finally started to throw some flower sites. But I'm sure that necessarily, since you were already smoking, you probably knew what weed looked like. So when it was flowering, what was your thought process there? Were you like, what is going on?
Actually, yeah, I never seen bud before. I'll be
Oh,
honest. Yeah, eighth grade to my freshman, or even all the way to my sophomore year, I didn't see anything but brickweed in my life.
oh, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. So I have never got actual bud, and I'd never seen actual bud until I was like maybe senior in high school. Before
Wow.
that, it was just all Mexican brickweed or brick bud the entire time, and all my dealers all had brick bud. And I'm thinking it's just skunk or Mexican weed, one of the two. Um, it had the profile of a skunk, but anyways, it was mainly just brick weed, so I never actually seen what bud looked like. I never knew what trichomes actually looked like. None of that. I knew that if it looked crystally or somewhat sandy, it was good stuff, But
Okay.
in terms of looking at under a microscope, never did that. Never knew anything of the plant structure. I knew what the leaf looked like because that's everywhere, right? But
Right.
the bud, the flower itself, there was nothing there that I could refer back to when I was that young, eighth grade.
For sure. I mean, that's really fascinating. I just had an experience recently where a neighbor of mine was asking me what I do, and I work as a manager for a commercial site here in Oregon, and I was just telling him about it because I'm like, I don't mind talking to you about it. You're a cool neighbor, and he was asking. He's like, so how many leaves do you usually collect when you roll up like a joint or something? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, you roll up all the leaves, and I'm like, no, you use the flower. He's like, there's a flower. And
Yep.
so, like I completely forget sometimes that there's a lot of people that are completely outside of cannabis entirely that just look at the leaves and think that that's the whole plant. And so it is good for me to remember. It humbled me a little bit to be like, oh, I need to be a little bit more aware of that.
Right.
Yeah. So once you grew this first plant, were you like hooked? Did you want to just keep growing, or what kind of took you down the rest of your cultivation path early on?
Actually, no, I quit.
Okay.
I got frustrated with the plant and I quit for a long time. Probably not until I was out of the Marine Corps. I just kept buying buds from that point on. But
Okay.
yeah, but once I got out of the Marine Corps and I was out there by San Diego, you know, I've never seen. I've heard of these dispensaries. For the first time in my life, I walked into a dispensary out there in California. I got my medical card,
Uh-huh.
um, and I claimed it for my PTSD and certain ailments I got from the Marine Corps, and they allowed me to grow 99 plants on one freaking license. I was like, what am I gonna do with 99? How do I even fit 99 plants in one bedroom apartment? Like, what? This is ridiculous, right? And
Yeah.
so, I took it, bought bud for my first time, saw actual good looking bud, for my first time in my life, and decided to pick up a clone over there and start growing again. And that was a Jupiter OG that I picked up from the House of OG in San Diego. I don't know if they exist now anymore, but that was my favorite place to go to. It was called House of OG. Um,
Nice.
yeah, it was a really awesome dispensary at the time. Picked up the plant, grew it, um, learned on my own, and learned was a lot of bro science that I told everybody because that's pretty much all we had back then was a lot of bro science, you know. Um,
Yeah,
and it got through a lot of good growth. just, just stuck with what you knew. Um,
for sure.
yeah, yeah.
And around like what year was this?
2009, nine. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's actually, I feel like 2009 dispensaries had some of like the best flower. Uh, if I like look back through like the California dispensary market, especially like during the 215 days. So that flower was probably pretty great. And then finding a clone of something that you already liked at the time, that was pretty huge. And so what did you do for this setup when you first started to grow again?
We went with lamps. In a basic HPS 300-watt lamp. Just something small for myself to grow the one plant that I want.
Sure.
For me to learn off of. Back then I didn't know how to clone or anything, so I would just go there and buy the clone, and then I would keep going back there to buy the clone again,
Sure.
um,
Same clone over and over.
over and over, just because I would learn the same plant. But they didn't have
Sure.
any other clones back then. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they had the planetary OGs like circulating pretty normally over there in San Diego. And I was trying to get more of it, but like, Mars and Venus and all that stuff, right? They came up with all the planetary OGs, and the only one I could get my hands on was the Jupiter one. Um,
Okay.
and any other plant, I honestly didn't go searching too much for it because I was happy with what I had. Um,
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, I started out with a little 300 water, and grew from that in a little closet.
In a little
I wish
closet.
I
Cool.
saved it so much. I wish I saved it, but Everybody wishes that back in the day, right?
Like you wish you saved the light?
Save the plant, save
Oh,
the
save
plant.
the plant. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Especially if
Everybody.
you grew it that many times.
Yeah. 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 What about you? What's your first plant you ever grew?
Man, the first plant that I ever grew, I actually don't recall what it was. I'm pretty sure it was just a bag seed of some kind. And I think I've told this story once before on someone else's podcast, but basically, me and my buddy, his mom, allowed them to like have a plant because she really liked how it looked in the windowsill. And so, but at one point it started flowering and she didn't want it anymore. So we started to pass it back and forth between our two houses like every day. And then I took it with me to college because we like started it the summer that I went before I went to college, and I took it with me and just like left it in my room next to a window, and it flowered out eventually, but it was pretty terrible. I think it had some sort of tangy flavors if I remember correctly, but then the actual like first time that I put effort into growing it was one of the like original runts cuts.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty
So
recent.
once you
6, 7 years
yeah,
ago.
actually for myself, the first time, well, you know, my partner and I grew a little bit at one place that we lived in California, but it didn't end up coming to fruition, and that was like 2012. But like more recently, I got out of culinary to go into the cannabis scene when COVID hit because it was just not sustainable at the time, and
Right.
uh, cannabis workers were essential workers, which was odd enough. So I decided to do that, and I think that was around like the June or July of 2020, and just been at it ever since.
Cool. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So so where did it go from this one plant? You were doing it over and over again in a closet, and at some point you upgraded to a larger space, I assume. And what sort of drove your decisions cultivation wise from there?
I got into the medical grow scene. Um, not really medical, if you feel me. We
Yeah,
used our license to, you know, come together in one place, and we got 3 licenses together, and we go with 300 plants, and we some of us sold it to clubs, some of us sold it to friends, some of us sold it to people, other people, right?
for sure. What
And that's how
was that still in California?
that was in San Diego, yeah,
Okay,
in San
cool.
Diego, and then let's see, I went through like this homeless phase, and then I went to another grow um, out in like San Bernardino, and that went south. And after San Bernardino, I sort of lost my passion for it because I got screwed over so many times.
For sure.
And yeah, and I just decided not to deal with the plant anymore for a long time. And then when I moved up to Washington here, the vibe was way different than it was in California. People out here were much more willing to teach me and hold my hand and like actually get me to a really solid grow at first. They were also willing to like um, put me as part of their community, which was different than it was in California. Because California was a lot more like cutthroat,
Okay.
and they were trying to like take advantage of you every second, every turn. You know, what do you got?
Yeah.
And
It's like the "what have you done for me lately" mentality.
exactly, um, and if you weren't part of their clique, then you were never going to be part of their clique. They were just going to use you and let you go after. And it wasn't like that here in
Yeah.
Washington. I didn't feel that at all. And every grow shop that I've been to, they were all really welcoming. Um, trying to They weren't trying to feed me with like 20 bottles of this shit to buy. They were always like, "This is all you need. Just do this." Just they weren't.
Yeah.
I just it was just a total different vibe. and I felt like this is a place where I can really put my feet into the ground and make a home and really, um, I guess, dive deep into the plants again, like I
Cool.
used to. Yeah, before I got screwed.
Yeah,
um,
for sure. And so it seems as though you scaled back significantly then when you let's say reopened shop for yourself, just doing what you wanted.
right. Yeah, and I went through like sort of like a small trap phase up here, um, but that
Okay.
was very short lived. You know, I just did what I needed to do to get off the ground, and you know, I think a lot of us growers go through that phase. And don't talk too
Yeah.
much about it. But
No.
yeah,
Couple packs here and there don't necessarily hurt anybody.
right, exactly.
Yep. No, I feel that it's especially even now when like the industry's in a downturn and there's still bills to pay and stuff. You got to make ends meet, and it's difficult to be within an industry where there's still so much stigma against it. But
Yeah.
uh, but I mean, you doing your IT thing outside of it and kind of keeping it as a hobby. I hear a lot of people find a lot of success in their hobby, let's say that way. So, what are some of the things that you like when you exited your little trap phase, as you said, and you kind of just were doing it for yourself? What were some of the key driving aspects of your decisions in the garden?
Oh, um, let's see. I mean, this 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 wasn't always a hobby, but when you mean what drove my key decisions in the garden, do you mean like taking care of the garden or?
Sure. Like, I mean, it could go either way. Like, what drove you to keep the garden going? What decisions did you make in the garden that you felt provided you with? Let's rephrase this a little bit. So,
Sure.
a lot of people find like both success and failures in the garden, and since you are now more doing it for yourself, what were some of those things that you ran into that helped in your decision making in the garden? Like, where did you find success? Where did you have failure, and how did that affect your growing style?
Oh, okay. Man, okay. So I moved around a lot. So moving around a lot, up and down, um, different areas of Washington, like the different environments and having to figure out what pathogens are there and what pest pressures are there, and it felt like every time I moved to a different part of town or even a town over, I had whole different set of issues, which is only like a couple miles apart, from where I used to be. It would
Yeah.
be a whole set of different issues that I would have to deal with. Even if it was indoors, certain areas, let's say, had issues with PM floating around in the air, and then they're like a couple miles down, I would have no problems at all. You
Well.
know, like there's parts of Everett where I used to live, and even if I just cracked the window open a little bit, that PM would come in and disinfect my plants, no matter what. And as soon as I moved out of Everett, um, into Seattle, main Seattle area, I would have no problems with that. Zero.
Well.
Um, yeah, or like different pest pressures. Thrips is everywhere, fungus nests everywhere. I'm not talking about those, but like different kinds of mites or leaf hoppers or things like that are just around the different parts of town. I never had to
Sure.
encounter, but yeah, that would be probably my biggest problem, just me moving around and having to deal with the different problems in that area. Where I find success is, once I beat the problem, I remember how to beat the problem, or I go around and I ask, how did you do it, and nobody should be too proud to ask for help or finding more knowledge on resolving an issue. Every day I
Absolutely.
ask people smarter than me, 100 times smarter than me, for more answers. And once I find an answer, I'm not really satisfied. Who else can I turn to? My person I go to is Nick, out in Rue de Leaf.
Oh, for
Have you
sure.
heard of him? Yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's a good friend. I've been using his product since like the day he started. Not the day he started, but like early in the company.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah,
I,
he's wicked smart. I've listened to like every single one of his episodes on Growcast.
oh
Um,
yeah,
they're just like full of knowledge, and once you start to like put that picture together that he's talking about, it does sort of lead to different pathways of thinking when you're in the garden, and how you can optimize different aspects of it through like almost a holistic approach rather than just
exactly.
brute forcing it or something.
Right, right. And I was all about the synthetic life up until I want to say like 6 years ago. Then I started diving into the organics, and I want to give credit to Mr. Canuck out there on YouTube. He's the reason why I
Yeah,
wanted to try organic, because he made it seem so easy, right?
he did. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think he's inspired a lot of people to try dry amendments, um, and move people away from this liquid salts, right? Um,
yeah.
and just try this easy method. And I did it. I did it. It was so easy. I couldn't believe how easy it was. I should have tried it a long time ago. So I went through that phase too, and then now I'm trying Synganic, and I've really dove into Synganic life, using root of leaf nutrients. And I can't say it's completely synthetic, because all of his nutrients are derived from natural ingredients.
Right.
Right. But the way it was processed, I guess, is considered making it synthetic. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like organics alive, where they're still just deriving like mineral salts, but just from using an organically approved process to create them, rather than through like chemical chelation or something along those lines.
Right,
So
right.
I
It's
I
more
think stuff like that is
enzymatically.
awesome.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like there's the company BioBiz out here in or not BioBiz, but damn, BioAg out here in
I,
Oregon, and they
oh,
use
oh,
a
yeah,
bunch
yeah, yeah.
of like humic and fulvic chelation methods for different minerals, and then they'll also have like the amino protein version of a bunch of the different minerals, so you have
Right.
like easy access to that for the plants. I think that they're all really valid, and I do really love the Synganic approach where you're using salts and then adding some sort of biology to the substrate to make sure that it improves the overall plant response. I I do it all the time in the commercial setting as well. It seems to produce a much more robust terpene profile and cannabinoid profile overall. So I'm definitely right on board with that. When so at this point in your growing career, what is your method of approach? Like, how do you look at the growing techniques that you use, and what do you think kind of makes your approach unique?
Oh man. I wouldn't say it's unique. Um, Now the way I grow, I put them either in cocoa, in straight cocoa, or I use a vegan soil base. You know, minus the
Okay.
the worm casting, is which again that could be vegan. Depends what the worms digested, right?
Sure.
But um, I usually use a vegan medium, amended medium, but I feel like I'm going to sort of branch out and start using animal byproducts like back guano and things like that. I might go back into doing that because I did see a better result doing that.
For sure.
I just find that it's a better, cleaner product when I don't use any animal byproducts or animal products in there. I don't have to worry about, the over-amounting amount of, possible bad microbes in there or whatever. Um, and the only reason why I'm taking this approach lately is because I'm trying to have a baby,
Okay.
and and I want to try and keep certain types of microbes out of my house, and I know that using animal byproducts introduces that into the house that I don't want, like E.
For sure.
coli, things like that, right?
Yeah, there were
Um,
like 2 growers that just died using bat guano.
yeah, yeah, right. What they catch? Some type of
I,
E. coli,
I,
I think.
yeah, I think it was something where it happened rapidly. It wasn't like a prolonged affair. They breathed the guano dust in, and then it was like a week or so later they were dead.
Yep, yep. Yeah, so I'm trying to keep any of that stuff down. So it's sort of like a philosophy too. Like plants should feed plants, right? Kind of like um, out there in nature, most of nature, you're not going to have dead animals sitting there or animal feces in the same spot over and over again. It's mainly decomposing organic matter from plant matter, right? Going
Yeah,
back into the soil mostly. Um,
yeah,
and I feel like I should mimic that as close to nature as possible, and so that's what I do. I feed them, you know, plant-derived nutrients back into the soil and create this veganic environment for them. Uh,
for sure.
yeah, it
You
has
know,
nothing to do with creating that luxury veganic weed crap. I don't
no,
care about that. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the
no,
philosophy.
I get it. I think that the philosophy and approach to like a veganic method is there's a lot of benefits for it when you are looking at things like what pathogens could I potentially be bringing into the soil structure that might transfer to the plant, whether it be something that becomes airborne or something that is even just uptaken by the roots, like a heavy metal or something along those lines.
Right. Yeah.
So like keeping it clean is definitely important, and like you said, even in nature, like the availability of like decomposing animals or guano or stuff like that is sparse compared to the decomposition of just plant matter. So it makes a lot of sense, and I could see where you're like, I might want to just, you know, introduce a little bit here and there, but definitely not something that's intensive.
Right. Right. What I was planning was fish, hydrolyzed fish.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah.
I
So
feel like that's
mainly
it. That's
fish.
it. Yeah, that would be an easy one.
Yeah.
I I have to always watch out because I use the Down to Earth 444. They're like all-purpose fertilizer for
Yep.
all of my outdoor plants and like in just my vegetable garden. And my dog will go over and try and eat it because he loves like dried fish treats, and so he's trying to eat all the like fish bone meal and stuff that's in there. And I'm like, get out of there, you.
Yeah, them dogs like the stinky stuff. Anything that stinks weird, they love that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty funny. Um, so let's see what else. What else do you want to talk about in terms of what's going on in your garden before we get into some of the more current aspects of your garden, like tissue culture and whatnot?
Um, I am reducing my garden right now, just because I'm preparing to move again, and I need
Okay,
a bigger place. I do need a bigger place. Um, so my wife and I are looking for a bigger place. Until then, I'm reducing my area with the lab, and putting everything into jars, until we're ready. Um,
for sure.
but besides that, I have one set that came out that is in testing right now. Probably will be actually available like in winter after testing's done. And that's the cereal berries F2 set. So I took cereal berries from Alien Genetics and I brought it to an F2 to find a good male. And I found a good male, and I hit it with a bunch of other genetics that are more recent, like Pineapple Bang, for example, from Sea Junkie. I
Okay,
hit it with that, but things are out in testing right now, and if you want some, I would love to pass you to try. Um, but
sure.
all my genetics, those are regulars, so all my testers usually start in regs. and then when we find the winners, when I reverse them and turn the femmes. But I like to keep my reg lines, first, before I start
For
stemming
sure.
everything. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
since you do some breeding, let's talk about that. And why don't you tell us all a little bit about some of the things that you're looking for in plants when you're breeding with them, both males and females, and sort of what are some of the desirable traits that you're seeking out.
gotcha. So when I'm pheno hunting and trying to find different plants, um, first I'm
Oh, I
observing
think I
what are the
lost
most
you.
common. Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you just restart that? I think I lost you there for a quick second.
sure, sure, no problem. Um, so I guess when I'm pheno hunting, I'm looking for a couple different things. One, what's the most common pheno that's popping up, or I should say geno, but anyways, we're all used to saying pheno. And
Yeah,
what's the most common one that pops up, and then after that, what is the most unique one out of all of them? And then structurally, I'm looking for that beautiful structure. I'm not
yeah,
necessarily looking for color. I know a lot of people obsessed with having a lot of color, being purple and all that, but I don't actually ever care as much as other people do.
fair enough.
It's just never been my thing. I prefer the terps, so usually when people grow my stuff, I get complimented by how strong the terpenes are felt and tasted through, just by even smelling it or even a stem rub. Um, they I usually get complimented for that because that's what I hunt for, is the terpenes.
For sure.
Second, I hunt for, like I said, is the structure. It has to be a really strong structure. Um, I prefer not to be lanky, where it constantly needs support every time. I don't mind it if it will give me the buds that I'm looking for, but
Yeah.
most of the time when they're lanky, they don't give me the bud structure I'm looking for most of the time.
Fair enough.
Um,
Fair enough. I feel like some of
yeah,
those lanky ones you end up getting like the really like spiry, like almost like foxtaily structure that's inherent within the genetics rather than it
right,
being a heat response or something like that.
exactly.
I do really love the small golf ball sized, almost like what people would describe as cookie genetics nugs.
Sure.
But I'm also from the Bay Area, so I love cookies, and anybody that doesn't like it and hates on them, I'm just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I won't lie. I like cookies too. I
Yeah.
love the flavor. If you, I don't understand. Okay, so I can understand people having like um disagreements with the feelings you get from like the high you get from cookies.
Right.
Okay, if it makes you feel sick, that ain't for you. I get it. But the flavor of cookies is outstanding. It's actually really good,
Yeah.
and it's been timeless, literally, right? It's so good that it's still around and people still use it,
Yep.
but it gets the most slack because I don't know how it makes people feel, right?
Yeah, I think it's the hype behind the brand too, and like the hype
Sure, they
man
don't
at the
like
front of the
burner.
brand.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's whatever. But I mean, dude did something right.
yeah, right, right. And even if it didn't come from burner, right,
No,
which are the
he made it
rumors,
famous.
he made it famous, right?
Yeah.
And it's still good. It still tastes good. I
Yeah.
just whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. So when you are breeding then, and since you are like sort of a terpene forward as well as structure forward, and not necessarily focusing on um, uh, the coloring, or are you focused at all on flowering time? Do you have a preference there?
Yeah, I do. I prefer the 9 week strains. It's just for me when I find that seems to be like the little honeypot range where about 9 to 10 weeks it seems to be the most best terpene profile. It's so strong. Um, the the development of the flavors tend to be a lot more pronounced than an 8 week. strains.
Yep.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are those unicorns, and there are the ones that do come out great in 8 weeks. But for me, when I've been popping seeds and hunting, it's always been the 9 to 10 weeks seems to be that sweet spot. Anything over 10 weeks starts getting a little too long for me. Not saying that I have a time schedule or anything, but when people grow and when I grow and when I look for things, there are great stuff 10 weeks and sooner.
For sure.
Yeah,
I
I don't
agree.
have to. Yeah. There is a pack that Mr. Nice did pass to me through Nick, and that's the Doors, which is like a 14-week genetic that I have to devote to, which I will get to because I told him that I would hunt it. But it's a haze on NL5, which is quite exciting
Oh
to
yeah.
get a haze from Mr. Nice himself.
It'll probably be really stony.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It could be really energetic. It's both hazes, haze A and B, and crossed into
For sure.
NL5 haze.
I mean, haze just always fucks me up. I just, it's not even,
Yeah.
like, even if it's energetic, I'm just all sort of, like, messed up from it that I'm just like, I'm just fucking stoned. I don't know, just get me some food and a beer or something.
Yeah, that's the kind of stone I really like too. The really strong one that puts me to the ground real quick. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, especially, like, now that I'm getting older myself, I don't actually like smoke anything. I just vape, and I just need something that's really strong because I don't want to have to like vape a bunch of weed just to get where I need to get.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I myself using dry herb vaporizers now. So,
Yeah,
but
me too.
yeah, it's great. The transition was pretty tough. I'll be honest. The transition to not burn and just dry herb vape,
Yep.
it's really tough. It's not the same feeling. The taste, I have to get used to like that baking taste. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
anyways,
it's like buttered popcorn.
yeah, exactly. You have to get past that and taste underneath all that, right? All the flavors underneath it.
Exactly. But it's the same thing when smoking too. I mean, when you're combusting and you have just that actual like carbon from the smoke on your tongue, you have to
Yeah,
get over that. And even now, like after dry vaping for so long, when I go back to like smoke a joint or on the very rare occasion smoke a blunt, I'm just like, holy crap, this is strong, and this
yeah,
is a completely different experience.
yeah, yeah. I find that dry herb vaping is way stronger. It affects me way differently. Like I can do one bowl of that dry herb vape and I'm toast. It hits me
What
way stronger.
what vape do you like to use?
I use a high five.
Okay.
High five is like what is it has a titanium bowl and then you fill that titanium bowl and then the heating element goes on top of that bowl.
Okay.
It's just on top of it. Yeah, and then it pulls all the heat down when you suck it and
Got it.
vaporize. Yeah, bakes it.
I've I've seen those before, and it's like the titan or the heat element that goes on top of it is like connected to like a little box or something that you can adjust the temperature
Exactly.
on.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one I use. Yeah, and it's just
Yep.
interchangeable too because you can switch it to the dabbing element and just dab off the
Yep.
same bond. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways,
For sure.
we
And
veered
then
off
you can also
course.
use like a bong still.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no, it's it's fine. We can go wherever we want with this. It's more
Oh
about
okay.
just where the conversation takes us.
Oh okay.
But we can get back to where we were with your breeding. And so, what are some of those flavor profiles that you specifically look for? I mean, you've mentioned that you like the cookies flavor profile, but when you're doing your own breeding,
Yeah.
what are you looking for?
Oh man, I love I have flavors of every kind. Even the ones I hate. I mean, the one. Okay, I'll tell you the one I hate because the one I hate is like literally like raw onions. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like gym socks and raw onions. It's just so like disgusting. Some people are super turned on by that disgusting flavor, and I can't get myself to like it at all, at all.
You're talking about like all the burger strains and like the
Yeah.
GMO and stuff like that.
So I like GMO. I like GMO. I like the garlic. I like specifically this onion flavor, bro. It's onion. It's just disgusting to me. It's like I'm inhaling a mouthful of onions. It's gross. That's
Oh man, that sounds really good to me.
oh man. See, some people really love that funkiness, and for me, I can't get into that at all. Like, I mean, I've bred it. I have this one called PBJ breath that I bred a while ago, and one of the phenos inside of PBJ breath is this onion pheno, and my buddy found it, and oh man, it's so disgusting. He loves it. I hate it. But that's the one flavor I will not be hunting and trying to put in my pack. I'll be honest. I
Fair
have
enough.
it, so when people ask me for it, I will give it to them because I bred it in on accident, or we discovered that it's in there on accident. But I don't really market those, or you know. But other than that,
Fair enough.
I love every sort of flavor. Right now, I'm into the gas because there's just candy everywhere. I'm tired of the candy,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to breed more of the gas back in. And man, even though cereal berry OG has a little bit of gas in there, it's nice.
Nice.
Probably from that GMO root beer. Um, but yeah, it's not too fruity, not too sweet. It really does taste like Fruity Pebbles OG mixed with some like OG Kush gas or something. It's really good. Yeah,
Oh man, that does sound really good.
yeah, it's really good. So that's the flavor I'm trying to bring back is more gas. And when people say gas, I'm talking like petrol, more of the fuel chemical gas. And I
Sure,
have to
like the
define
burn your
that.
nostrils gas.
Yeah, more of the stringent, gassy type
Yeah.
things. Yeah. Yeah, and we have to define that today because people are like, yeah, it's candy gas, or like, everything is gas these days. Like, nah,
Yeah.
it's not gas. It's not.
No, it's almost like when people would call it dro, right? Like, well,
Yeah,
it's not all grown hydroponically.
yeah.
So let's maybe differentiate it. But if we're just gonna all call it dro, then okay. Uh, I think those sort of colloquialisms sort of come and go with the different eras.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, back then, yeah, we should say it was either swag or dro, one of the two, and that sort of got moved to like dro is hydro now, right?
Yeah.
But then in the late '90s, early 2000s, they moved that to being like hydroponic is dro. But before that, I thought people were just saying dro as if it was good weed, right?
I'm pretty sure that it was because the good weed was hydroponics at one point, and so people would call it dro to make sure that it was being told that it was grown hydroponically, and then enough people were like, "Wait, so the good weed's dro? Oh, well, my weed's good. I'm not going to tell you how I grow it. It's dro."
Right, right. Yeah. Um,
But maybe I was just smoking in a different time in a different place where that's what it meant.
no, you're probably right. It's like I said, when I was younger in Chicago, that's all we knew was brickweed back then. And
For sure.
we didn't really get any of that White Widow or any of the Cali Dro. We only heard about it, but we couldn't get our hands on it. Yeah, we didn't know
Fair
the right
enough.
people. Yeah,
Nothing coming down from Canada either.
nothing. Chicago was pretty locked down when the war on drugs were happening. The Chicago was one of the places you did not want to be caught. I mean, I got caught with paraphernalia. You know, um, I got caught with paraphernalia, and they threw me in like 3 classes of drugs class,
Phew.
whatever. And I learned more about drugs in those drug classes than I ever had in my entire life. That was the wrong place to send an eighth grader. Like that was
That's
so
funny.
stupid. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking doing that, but
Me neither.
yeah, an eighth grader, me. But anyways, it's crazy. Chicago's crazy about that kind of stuff. Um, even though they're one of the more bluer cities you could be in.
Yeah.
They're
Well, I
super
mean,
crazy about it.
I feel like if we're talking about like blue or red and like back in like the late 80s, early 90s, and even through the late 90s, like the Democratic Party was very anti-cannabis as well. I just think it was the war on drugs was just popular amongst both sides of the aisle, so to speak.
Right, right. You're totally right. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
um. Anyways, okay. So back to breeding. So you know what I'm looking for now in terms of males. If I'm looking for a male, I will. It's a more longer process for males because you probably already know you have to grow them out, you have to flower them, see what kind of smell they do, and then if you really wanted to go deep, you can reverse the male and figure out what kind of female traits that it might express and pass those on, and then you may make another decision whether or not to keep those and pass those on. Make seeds, test those seeds because you never know. Even with a good-looking male, you just never even know what'll
Yeah.
pass on. So that's my rags always have to go through like a while long testing because you just never know what pops up in those. Um, so yeah, right now those are being tested as we speak. Even some of the genetics that I borrowed from um, certain certain breeders, I don't want to put their name out there yet, but certain breeders, I decided to pass them seeds that I made, and hopefully they find some winners there, and we can work something. But um, don't know yet. Don't know yet.
Yeah.
We'll know in winter time. Winter time, I'll let people know. Um, but until
Awesome.
then, I'm gonna lay low. Yeah.
Fair enough. Have you actually done like a male reversal, introducing like ethylene or something to try and get it to flower?
Yeah, for males, you don't use silver. You don't use the same type of methods. You got to use a different method, a different chemical,
Right.
but same process as reversing a female once you get the chemical. Um, and there are different ways of messing with a plant's hormones. Um, you can you can cause the male to go into a polyploidism, uh, polyploid um, mode, and you can hyperdrive that polyploid mode and cause that to express female traits out of a male. There's a lot
Okay.
of different ways of forcing a male to express female traits. I shouldn't say a lot. There's only a couple that I know, but there are ways. And once you exploit that, I guess that's exploiting. Yeah, once you exploit that, you can figure out where you want to go from there. Is it important to reverse the male? No, it's not important. Um, you just never. Again, even if you did reverse it and find the trait that you wanted to express from a female out of that male, it doesn't guarantee you that that will express in the female at all. You know, so I've
Fair enough.
had males where it would force the female. Every seed was all recessive phenols, like not what I intended at all. It would bring out all the recessive stuff that I did not want out of the plant. And I would totally have to trash the entire project um, because that male would do that. I've had that, and it's more common than you think, than most people think. Yeah.
Yeah. I've I've had to like trash an entire leg of a breeding project because the male that I chose for it just, yeah, everything that grew out afterwards had these really weird traits that were like everything had sort of this peppery like caryophyllene aroma, but
Yep.
stacked on top of other things, so it kind of had that like barf smell to it, and I was like, oh my god, this isn't even like a pleasant funk. This is just weird. So that just got
See, imagine how you feel about that right now. That's me with the onions. I can't do it. I can't do it, man. I
fair
tried. I
enough.
can't do it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean
Other
like
than that,
that.
yeah.
It was like almost a sour, but like sour garbage, and it's like, oh my god, this is not fun.
Yeah, that's how I feel, man. That's how I feel. I totally relate, but with the onion side. Um, yeah. Outside of that, then after it goes into testing, um, after I get good data, good results, not all the stuff that goes in testing makes it to the actual sales. Probably only less than half of those make it to sales. Uh, the top 25% actually only makes the sales, and then everything else just sort of goes,
Fair enough.
puts away into my vault. Um,
For sure.
could I sell the other ones? Yeah, I could. I just don't think it's worth it. Most people just want the top 25%, and that's it. Um, and why would I put out the other bottom 75% if the cream of the crop is that, right? I wouldn't want to do that. Um,
Yeah.
other than that, all my uh, seeds that are labeled with the PNW Cultivar project, um, the profits get donated. So I started out as non-for-profit, and a lot of my non-for-profit projects were pretty successful at the time.
Okay.
Um, but it hasn't really been successful lately, I'll be honest. Just normal seed sales being down, everywhere. It's not just me as a breeder, it's everybody. It's just this market got so saturated, and there's a lot of good genetics out there, you know. Um, it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to make decent sales without using hype strains. I'll be
Yeah.
honest, because uh, the hype strains it's already been marketed so many times, and people know that as to be like this is it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it feels like the breeders that are not part of the like that upper 5% that are just well known because they've been around for 10 years plus and had success in multiple commercial spaces as well as like illicit market uh, areas, and their strains are just well known because the consumer likes them. That
right,
you really have to like almost be, you got to be posting every day, maybe multiple times a day. You got to be showing it off as though it's like the best thing ever, and sometimes it just feels like a lot of it's not false and it's not fake, but it's, for me at least, whenever like I try to showcase something, I'm like, I don't want to showcase it more than once. Like if people were interested, then they'd be interested, and if I'm like overdoing it, is that to the detriment of like the sort of picture that I have of this genetic in my mind? Am I like creating too much around it, almost like over promising and potentially then having the ability to under deliver? I just I that always makes me very trepidatious going into stuff like that.
right. And a lot of times for me, even like I get I get a major case of imposter syndrome. Like
Yeah.
am I really being a copy of this guy? Or am I going my own way? If this is successful, is it because of this guy, or is it because I did something? It's just constant questions, doubting myself
Yeah.
really a lot, and a lot of it is it keeps me humble too, right? I'm not going
Yeah.
around there, flexing my ego or anything, but it keeps me in check. I think that's
I
the
think
way.
that's it.
Yeah,
It's smart. That's a good way to go about it. Because yeah, if you overinflate your product, then it is also like potentially it's feeding the ego as well, and then it could lead to, I don't know, just a different perception of yourself or of your brand that might not then be falling in line with what you had in mind originally.
right. Yeah, totally, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so with your breeding, it sounds like, I've actually interviewed another breeder who got into tissue culture, and it might be for very similar reasons as yourself, and it's just keeping around a genetics library that is required in order to like maintain a level of sophistication around the breeding program that requires maintenance of genetic stock from multiple iterations and multiple generations to make sure that you're either able to follow it through, bring it back through back crossing or something like that to really lock in certain traits that you're looking for. Was this sort of the direction that you were looking into when you decided to venture into doing some tissue culture of your own?
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of people, they lose their genetics, or we have to minimize our mom stock because we've run out of space for our mom stock, so we have to end up killing it. With tissue culture, now that tissue culture has advanced pretty far enough where even the home grower can do it fairly easily. My one of my biggest persons that got me really interested was a person on YouTube, and her screen name, she goes by Plants in Jars.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
yeah, and she does a really great explanation on how she does it and how she breaks it down and do it at home. And that's where I got the great idea to, I shouldn't say I got the great idea, but that's where I got my idea to um, try and pursue that, but not in such a cheap way where I have a high failure rate. I actually really tried to do it right, and I saved my money and not waste my money on like small things and constantly upgrading small things. I just wanted decent stuff from the get-go, so I don't have to do that, right?
Right.
Everybody eventually outgrows their equipment and wants something better, but for now, I am trying my best to not go so cheapy and having to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, yeah, my one of my biggest reasons, and the biggest reason now, is to store my cannabis for long-term storage, so I can bring it back at a later time if I need it, if I want it, if I need it, if somebody else needs it, whatever, it's there.
For
It may
sure.
take a couple months to take a little snip and bring it back to a plant, but at least it's there, and I'm able to access that. And now with these new projects coming along, with like the 90s Super Skunk that I'm going to be popping, with the Korean land races, especially land races because they take forever to hunt and grow. With all those coming, I really want to store them so that I don't have to deal with them in my mom crop 24/7. And
Yeah.
just having a mom crop takes a lot of resources out. You know, it's just a, I don't want to say it's a waste, but that's what it feels like when you just have a giant 5 by 5, a 10 by 5, 10 by 10, full of plants that are just sitting there vegging and
Yep.
doing nothing, right?
It's one of the conversations that comes up so constantly where like when doing a pheno hunt, you don't need like when you're taking into account how many plants you're going to be flowering out in this pheno hunt, you then need to think, okay, I need almost as much space for all of the genetics that I'm keeping around as moms, or even if you're keeping them really small and continuously cloning the top just to replenish the stock so that you can keep it at a low footprint, it's still like, hey, if you're doing that, then that's a bunch of labor and time, and it really eats through a lot of resources. And so if you can, take a snipping, like just one nodal culture off of each seedling at week 5, and then if you're going to flower out the seed plant, just throw it right into flower. Or if you, like I always prefer to flower out cuttings because I just tend to get a different morphology from the cutting than I do from the seed plant. And if it's for
Right.
production purposes, then I'm gonna be doing that. But I could see for breeding purposes, especially when your primary market is home growers, that you just want to flower out the seed plant because that's what a lot of the customers are going to be flowering out. So you can just take that node, pop it right into culture. As long as you already have your success rate down to, I don't know, 90%, then you just need two cuttings or two nodal cultures of each plant and you're good to go. And yeah, then you can just flower it out and reduce your storage space from almost like the equal of your flower space to, I don't know, a tenth, a 20th maybe,
Mhm.
of your total space required. I saw on your Instagram your setup, and it looks like you have your sort of tissue culture set up in a like a 4x8 tent or a 5x10 tent,
Yep.
and that's
5 by
literally
5.
what I have going.
Yep. Yep.
Nice. Oh, a 5x5. Oh, even smaller.
Yeah. It was smaller. Yeah.
Cool. But tell us a little bit about your setup for tissue culture and maybe some of the practices that, because for me when I got into it, I found that like repetition was key in learning a lot of the different sort of movements that are required to make sure that you don't cause cross contamination or other things like that. So what are some of the what are some of the processes that you work through? Maybe you could go through a couple of the things that you might have already found success or failure in while you've been setting up your lab and getting into it.
Okay, so I guess so far the only failure that I really ran into was when I first started doing this. I forgot the pH the agar. Um,
Yep.
so when I was putting them in, and I couldn't explain it, everything was starting to turn black and like not alive, right? And I guess they were. I think the pH in there was like 5.25, like five and a quarter, five and a third, or something like that. Um, and it wasn't. They weren't very happy in that solution. So I had to figure it out. I had to pull it back out, pull all the cultures out, put them into bleach and sterilize them again, and then liquefy what I had to put it. I have a heat plate and a spinner thing mixer,
Right.
and then I took one of the vessels and I put it right onto the heat plate and I let it warm up, and then I stick my pH meter in there because I forgot. I did remember I forgot to do it, and it was like five and a quarter. So I had to redo my entire whole first set, and that was frustrating because like I did a lot
Yeah.
during that day, and then I had to, once you reheat that agar, it doesn't look the same. It doesn't look like that crystal clear, pretty anymore. It starts turning cloudy, and I get disappointed with myself because of all the work I wasted, and then now it doesn't look pretty. Whatever, it's just aesthetics, but
Yep.
you
Fair.
know, that's my first mistake is I forgot the pH. I forgot to pH that, and
Yep.
but I learned really quick. In terms of cleanliness, man, my room is pretty good. I have a whole room UVC sterilizer in one of the vents that on the top vent up there. I have
Yep.
it sticking out of there like a whole foot, like a foot long.
Okay.
Yeah, so I turn that on for 15 minutes before I go in, 15 minutes every time I leave, and that sterilizes the room. Right next to it is a negative ion generator, so it makes the air heavy. So when I open the doors and go in and stuff like that, all the particles become heavy because that negative air generator makes the particles fall. On the
Oh
floor, I
wow.
have yeah, yeah. So you should look into that. It's pretty cool.
That's
And then on
cool.
the floor, I have I have normal HEPA filter. So all the particles that fall go suck them to the HEPA filter and goes right back up. And then that's underneath my stainless steel table. And then on top of the table, I have my HEPA filter, and above the HEPA filter is my outtake. Um, and then behind every intake, I have another UVC. I went overboard. Basically, I was told I went overboard with the sterilizing thing. They told me I really don't have to worry about it. That all I had to worry about was my immediate cleaning, my immediate area that I'm going to be working in. My workspace should be like immaculately
Right.
clean. You don't really have to worry too much about outside. I didn't know, so I set up everything to be like with a push of a button, I can sterilize my whole damn room,
For sure.
uh, yeah, without worrying about it. And that's what I do, and that's how I keep my whole place clean. Is just with UVC and
For sure.
with ion generators. Yeah.
That's pretty great. I learned about using the UVC lately, where there's even some protocols that some tissue culture labs have set up where they use the UVC for the vessel sterilization. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, that sounds a lot better than shoving a bunch of things in an autoclave, because that was one of my big first learning lessons is getting into a good prep cycle, because like the autoclave can only handle so much media or like total amount of vessels that you're putting in there
Yep.
at a time, and then from there to the workspace, if you're can only get so many sterile at a time, and then you fill it all with agar and you're like, all right, I'm going to get into tissue culture, and then you like go through one plant and you're like, oh shit, I just have to start this all over again, rather like I should have just bulk prepped a bunch of these vessels and a bunch of media, and then I can do like a bunch of plant work all at once. And that's where I've sort of started to gear more towards. And it seems to work a little bit better, because then you can, if you have the time to do some plant work, you do some plant work. If you don't, just throw some more vessels through, or even sterilized water for your final rinsings and stuff of the
Yeah.
explant material. That always seems to be something that I didn't think about ahead of time. And then, like you're saying, how like you were like, I want to get the whole place nice and sterile, when it's really just like that aseptic workstation that you need to make sure is nice and sterile. And
Right.
then I've even, like the person that taught me, Mike Hydro, the guy that was doing it for the Jungle Boys for a long time, he taught me, you have your dirty work and your clean work, and you don't have to worry about the dirty work. Like when it's outside of the flow hood, who cares what gets into it? You're going to put it into a sterile condition at one point through a specific protocol. And
Right.
so that was hugely helpful for me, because I was like, okay, I got to get all the different things. Like I was thinking maybe get an ozone generator and run that between, entry and exit of the lab. And I'm like, oh, this seems like it might be a little bit excessive, or getting like the chlorine dioxide sachets and running those. But
Oh
then I'm
yeah.
like, oh man, this is tough for my sinuses. I can't put it inside my house.
Yeah.
I can only do it like at the commercial facility, and that doesn't always work in terms of just like people exiting and entering. So it is like a whole process to get used to.
Yeah.
What about like in terms of like your aseptic technique when you're entering explants into culture? Did you find that there was any hiccups or anything like that in those steps that you found tricky, or was it fairly straightforward to you?
Um. So the way that the lady at Plants and Jars do it, she has the original vessel where she takes the dirty material and then puts it in 10% bleach solution. She brings that into her, well, she cleans it really well and then puts it next to her aseptic area. And then in the aseptic area, she has another 10% bleach solution that's sterile, that's been, clean and sterilized. And then next to that is a bath, a clean water bath that's also sterile. And I just sort of follow that protocol. So I take the dirty material, which isn't really that dirty anymore once it's mixed into the solution about a whole minute or two.
Yep.
And then I transferred all that into the sterile 10% bleach, and then I take that and I put it into the clean water bath where I let it sit in there for about another minute, and I take a sterile tool and I stir it around with that sterile tool, and I keep it in there, and I stir it for about a good minute before I take those plants and explants and then put it into the agar solution.
For
Um,
sure.
Now, I'm not too familiar with all the terms yet. I'm still learning. I'm really fresh. Um,
For sure.
but I love it so far. It's super easy. Once you get, like you said, once you get your rhythm down, once you figure out what works and you're not going to be like contaminating. I haven't found a single contamination in a thing yet. Um,
Have you been using anything like ppm or anything like that?
so I use what's it called? The plant, the brand is called Tissuponics. Have you heard of
Okay.
them?
I haven't,
Okay.
but
So I got into eBay and I found an all-in-one solution. And a guy that does Tissuponics, he has his own solution. There's one that's mixed with TDZ. That's a long-term storage option, and I use that, and it comes with a little bit of ppm in there,
okay.
some type of preservative. I don't know if it's ppm, but some type of preservative he puts in there. So yeah, to answer you, yeah, he does put some preservative in there. I don't know what preservative he puts in there. Um, and he does throw in some sterilizing solution, dichlorohexane or something like that.
Okay.
And yeah, he puts that in there. Well, he doesn't put that in there. He gives it like a separate pouch to go ahead and use and sterilize your stuff. I don't need to use that. I autoclave all my stuff. Sorry, not autoclave, but I pressure cook it in a pressure canner. I think
Like
it's
an
like a
instant pot?
24. No, it's a 24 quart pressure canner where you have to clip the sides and
Oh
you
yeah.
know you have to watch the gauge go up. It can go all the way up to like 25 psi, but I keep it at 12 because that's recommended. So I'll keep it at 12 and then I'll start the timer for 30 minutes, walk away, go walk my dog or something, come back and it's done. You know. Um,
Do you just
but
do
before
that
I
like
walk,
on the stovetop?
yep, right on the stove top. Yep, and then
Nice.
I let it cool on the stove top. By the time I bring it back in, um, it's it's probably have to wait like 2 hours for it to completely cool down, but not cool enough for that agar to set. So that's the most important part because I every time I sterilize, I always stick more agar in there, more agar solution because I go through that real quick. It's super
Yeah.
fast. I'm not using those small flip top ones. I'm using a really nice one that I bought from China. They're like I want to say a 2.5 inch bottom, and then the top is 3 inches on top, and it's about 4 inch tall. So they're
Sure.
pretty nice vessels. They're
They look
polycarbonate.
like the yeah, like the magenta G7s or something like that.
I don't know what those are, but
I think they look very similar to what you're talking about, where they're like a square vessel and they're
yes,
yeah. And are they polycarbonate or polypropylene?
polycarbonate, and with a
Cool.
polypropylene lid.
Cool.
And,
Yeah. That's the one thing that I was having the worst time finding is good polypropylene vessels. That
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
it's difficult. So what I'm going to start using is 16-ounce polypropylene deli containers, where
yep,
the lids in the deli container are polypropylene, and then they have these like almost for like mushroom cultivation. They have these micro pore filters that you can just stick on a
yep.
hole if you punch it out, so you can create your own vented vessels. And I think each one costs like 30 cents. And so when I was looking into like the nice plastic like polycarbonate or polypropylene ones, I was blown away that each one was like $15 or $10 unless you're going through something like my buddy pointed me out, like AliExpress or Alibaba or something like that, where you can order vast quantities for pennies on the dollar.
Right. That's where I got mine. I got mine off of Alibaba. I can send you the link later if you want it.
For
And
sure.
I got like a whole carton of it, which was like 135, 160. I forgot. It's either 135 or 160 vessels of those things for only like 50 cents a piece.
Phew. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and those are really quality ones. So far I've tested it. I went through 5 pressure cooks so far, and it still looks brand new. It doesn't feel brittle or
Nice.
anything. So I'm trying to see where I'm always throwing in the same one in every single cycle because I want to know how long these are supposed to last. So
For
that's
sure.
what I've been doing. I went through 5 cycles so far, and it's still like brand new. I can send you the link later. Yeah, they're
Yeah, that
cheap.
sounds great. I
Yep.
know that the polycarbonate ones, if I remember correctly from my research, that they're the ones that will eventually become brittle. But I think
Yep.
it's through multiple cookings, and then also depending on the fraction of the light that you provide to the plants and how much of it does have UV in it, it'll
Mhm.
tend to like go yellow pretty quickly. And once it goes yellow, then you have to be aware of it starting to like spontaneously crumble to pieces.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that yet, but I'll let you know when I reach that point.
Fair enough. I mean, that means you're getting the full use out of it, so that's what matters.
Yeah, and it wouldn't matter if I needed to toss it 50 cents. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty good for any sort of lab equipment. 50 cents is like pennies. Yeah.
Yeah, after doing all the research and looking into the different lab equipment requirements for even just like the very most basic setup, just to create some level of efficiencies, it is a little bit staggering when you go, oh, this is not just like popping a tent up with a small light. This is a whole new facet of cannabis cultivation that costs a significant amount more money.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I do understand also why the fees for different tissue culture labs and stuff are they seem astronomical at first, but then when you realize the effort and the overhead that goes into it, it becomes a little bit more obvious why their fees are so steep.
Yeah, it becomes very clear once you start getting into it.
For
Definitely. Like
sure.
the whole process is so slow too. You know, getting the plant, cleaning it, taking it to the next step, cleaning it, rinsing it, and then drying it out, putting it into the agar. The whole process is so much more longer and so much more work than just taking a cut, putting it into a plug, put the hood
Oh
on,
yeah.
calling it a day. You know. But yeah.
Have you gotten an orbital shaker yet to help make your plant washing easy?
No, I mean, I guess I could, but I really didn't. I don't really find the need for it yet. I guess once I
Fair
run
enough.
into contamination of some type, then I'll have to figure out where it went wrong. But yeah, I haven't had the need for an orbital shaker yet. Yeah. I don't
Fair
think
enough.
anybody really does until you really mass get to that point where you start mass producing, right? That's
Right.
just a luxury. This is all I need.
I got it so that I could do other prep stuff while it's shaking,
Oh
just to.
man, that's the
But
luxury.
it's the luxury buy. It was rather than just sitting there and just stirring two at a time, sitting in front of the hood, listening to a podcast or something.
Yeah,
Now I get to do more work.
yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, man, this has been a great conversation, and I think we're kind of caught up to where you are now. Is there anything else about either your tissue culture journey so far or your other aspects of your gardening that you'd like to talk about?
Um. No, no. Actually, I pretty much spoke most of it to you. I attribute a lot of my successes to Rooted Leaf. Um, I am in no way, shape, or form being paid or sponsored by them. Really, um, I just believe in their product wholeheartedly, and I ran a lot of different stuff, and um, I'm not just saying this because Nick is a good friend of mine, but I'm also saying it because I really want other people to try it. It's really the next level stuff, and people need to experience it. In my opinion, it's a little more expensive. Have you ever seen the pricing on it yet? No.
No, I haven't. I When I first learned about it, I was already on to doing just two-part hydroponics, and I have not turned back from two-part hydroponics because the way that
Simple,
I mix
easy.
my aqueous solutions, it's either equal parts or 1 part to 0.75 parts, and I just it's really easy, and
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
water to runoff whenever whatever media I'm using, and I can blast them with light and just it makes my life really easy, especially considering I was trying to do like organics at home when I was growing at home, and I was doing hydroponics at work, and there's clashing sort of philosophies in some of that,
yeah,
and so I
exactly.
decided that to clarify it for myself and to kind of give myself an easier time, I was just going to do the same method wherever I was growing, and it actually helped me personally as a grower make some like leaps and bounds forward in my own like personal discovery of the plant and of cultivation techniques, and diving deeper into things like uh, crop steering or
Sure.
using
Yeah.
generative and vegetative cues to promote different morphologies and plant growth
Right.
patterns, and that has been like a whole different side of my journey, and it's I think it's very fulfilling to kind of really see progression in one's own abilities in the garden. And I was just struggling doing that when trying to do both sides. But by the time that to make a long story short, I saw Rooted Leaf once I was far away from growing with organics.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, before I started using Root Leaf, I was sort of on that 2-part, 3-part program like you. I was using Dynagrow, and I still love Dynagrow. It's a really great product. It does what it's supposed to do. It's real
Yeah,
simple to use. Just one part for veg and two parts for flower, and that's all you need to know. It's super easy, right?
that's super
Um,
easy.
Super easy. Yeah, but I got away from it. I just because the product I got from um, that versus, don't get me wrong, the product I got from that was really excellent still. But the terpene expression, nothing like root and leaf. They understand. They understand the whole process, the second metabolic pathways that these plants take to create these um, compounds. They know it really really well. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways,
That's
um,
awesome. I probably should give that a try at some point just to experience it myself because like the lever that I have to pull is more or less EC for the most part, and I can use that to adjust deficiencies in my plant fairly easily, but at the same time I don't necessarily get down to the minutia of adjusting individual inputs or
yeah,
individual like micronutrients or macronutrients for that matter to try and uh, adjust what I'm seeing within the plant tissue. The only thing that I can do is apply a different spray here and there. And so maybe if they have some like spray products, I'll look into that just to
all
see
of them sprays.
what I can do to combine that.
Yeah, all of them
Well,
sprays.
there you go.
Yeah, is awesome. And they just came out with a new product that I just tested for them, and it's their micro. So you
Okay.
might want to look into that. It's also sprayable. It's really good, super super concentrated, about a half a mil to a gallon that I fed in the roots, corrected all of my micro deficiencies in all my plants.
Wow.
Um, so I would give that a try. And then all my plants that were suffering from deficiencies because of highlight, because they grew into the light because I was lazy, um, that even corrected that problem too, which is phenomenal because I'd never seen any product correct that problem from plants growing into it because of my laziness, right? But
That's
it
really
did
cool.
that, yeah, and yeah, that is something I would actually encourage you to try and grab from Nick. If you message Nick, I'm sure he might even hook you up.
For
So
sure. I might have him on the podcast.
yeah, yeah, you should. He's really easy to talk to. I don't know. He loves talking about these plants, so it wouldn't
Yeah,
be
every
hard
time I
for
hear
him.
him, he's so passionate and just so like well informed that
Yeah,
he would be a good person to have on. That's great.
yeah.
Well,
He has a great. Sorry, he has a great
no,
way of bringing. He has a great way of talking all these like really really complicated subjects and breaking them down into a way we can understand. You know, uh, call it Barney style. But yeah, you're really good. Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I do always like to wrap these up with a few sort of generic cannabis podcasting questions, so to speak. And so I think this is a great time for us to get into those.
Okay.
What is your favorite strain of all time, or
Blue
favorite
Dream.
single cultivar? Blue Dream.
Blue Dream. Santa Cruz cut. Yeah, that's my favorite of all time. Sorry, guys. You guys call it boof or whatever. I love that stuff. I don't care. That's just
For
what I
sure.
love. You know,
I mean, you
nothing.
said you love hazes, so um,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Do you have the Santa Cruz cut in your stable?
Not anymore. Not
Oh
anymore.
no.
I before I left Oklahoma, I had left that cut to somebody's care, and it things happened, and lost that cut. I know it still
Fair enough.
exists. I know it's still in heavy circulation, so it's not hard to get. Um, I just worry if it's clean cut. That's all.
For sure. The guy that actually founded this the Craft Growers Network with me, where we host these podcasts on YouTube. Gabby, he has a Blue Dream cut, so maybe we can get the two of you together and get that into your hands.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, I'd
Cool.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we started a little breeding project between the two of us, and one of the crosses or one of the receivers is going to be Blue Dream, and we haven't released yet what we're using for the male, but that'll come out in the near future. But it'll be something that I'm sure you'd be interested in, considering you do. It does sound like you like to hunt through some of those older stocks and older desirable strains, because some of it just needs to come back into rotation.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
That's a lot of lost flavors and been, a lot of lost flavors, a lot of lost cannabinoid profiles. And that's the most important part. Is that's what the between the terpenes and that cannabinoid profile is what dictates our feel, and I want to bring all that back. In the 90s we would be able to smoke a little something and that lasts for hours. Today it's just, I don't know. We're lucky if we get an hour, right?
yeah, yeah. Very true. I wonder if that just might be our tolerance or age.
Maybe, but I mean, I was smoking way heavier back then, and
Yeah,
it would get me every time. But
fair enough.
who's to say, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, next question. So, as a breeder, if you had to restart your entire breeding collection, let's say you lost all of your seeds, all of your mothers, your clones, everything, and you had no plants, no seeds whatsoever, what breeder would you choose if you had to choose a single breeder to choose from their genetic selection to restart either your breeding program or to start pheno hunting through to start selecting for a breeding program?
CSI Humboldt.
Nice.
They
That's the
have
answer I usually give.
they probably have the widest selection. First off, they do all their
Yep,
testing. They're very respectable, very respectable. Yeah, I would say CSI Humboldt would be my first go-to, and then I would look at some other modern breeders. My favorite is Sea Junkie. I
for
love
sure.
Sea Junkie. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, CSI
CSI.
Humboldt's a great answer. Just I would just like pick maybe my 10 favorite S1s and just pop 100 of those each, and
Yeah,
you'd be off
I
to the
agree.
races in no time.
Yes, yes, definitely, I agree. Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, last question. What's your most memorable cannabis or smoking related experience?
Hmm. Probably when I first experienced being stoned for my first time in my life. My first couple
Okay.
times smoking weed, I didn't really get too high. I don't know if it's just me, but it took a couple whiles before I actually felt stoned for the first time in my life. And when I got stoned for the first time in my life, I was stuck in like this weird position on my back, just like with my arms up like this, just staring into the sky. And my friends were just sitting there laughing at me, and I had no idea if they were like, no idea about them at all. It was just I was just zoned into the sky, staring at the sky, and just looking really stupid for my first time, while everybody else around me was laughing. And I think that was the most memorable moment because I didn't realize they were laughing at me until I snapped out of it and I looked at them and I laughed with them because I couldn't believe what I was doing. But yeah,
Oh, that's
that's
so funny.
yeah,
How old do you think you were when that happened?
8th grade. Yeah,
Eighth grade.
8th grade.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice. So it wasn't too long after you first started smoking that you first found your first plants.
yeah. I think I just turned 15, so yeah, I was 25 years ago.
No. No, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like a lot of people have similar stories where they didn't necessarily get stoned the first few times they smoked, and so when it actually hit them and when they first felt it, it hit them like a train, and it was like
Yeah,
a formative experience that they never forget. So that's
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. That's the experience I
Awesome.
had.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining me today and for telling your story and sharing some of your advice and knowledge, both in the garden and in your tissue culture journey so far. And yeah, I really appreciate it. And I really think that people are going to get a lot out of this episode.
Thank you, Nick, for having me. Thanks for letting me talk to your audience. I really appreciate your time and your audience's time. It's been a pleasure of mine to be in this car and talking to you. It was fun too. I hope we can do this another time too.
Definitely. Yeah, we can get into more of your story if you want to, or any other specifics, and maybe do some deep dives into tissue culture in the future. We have had a fair amount of guests that do tissue culture either as their main thing or as a side project, and I think that since it's such a big and emerging part of the cannabis cultivation scene, that it would be good to just have sort of maybe like a tissue culture roundtables discussion.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool, actually. Great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay.
Well, awesome. Again, thank you so much, and we will talk soon.
All right. Thank you. Ciao, guys.